Welcome back to the Tara Palmeri Show. We've got a lot of things to cover this week. We've got to talk about Jimmy Kimmel and how the cancellation of his show, or the suspension, the indefinite suspension, which means he most likely will not be back, is silencing everyone, not just comedians, but journalists, and most importantly, the people who are trying to get to the heart of one of the biggest scandals and cover-ups going on right now, the Jeffrey Epstein story. But first, I want to comment on testimony from two law enforcement officials. Our top law enforcement official, Kash Patel, the FBI director, testified before the House Judiciary Committee that he did not think there was credible evidence to continue the Jeffrey Epstein case, to continue to look for third-party perpetrators, despite the fact that if you look at the depositions of Virginia Roberts Giuffre, she names men that she was trafficked to. Some of those names are redacted, some of them are not. He said it was not credible. She's not the only one. There are others. And if you actually look through the FBI vault, you'll see that yourself. But get this, Kash Patel also admits at the same time that he's never actually looked through the files himself. How is he supposed to say it's not credible? And by the way, what does it take to be credible? These are testimonies under oath. These are depositions that the victims of Jeffrey Epstein have submitted to be a part of their case. And yet, not credible? I mean, the prosecutor, the lead prosecutor on the case in 2008, wanted to charge him with 35 counts of sex trafficking. And no, not credible at all. It was a disgusting day. It really was. And then on Friday, Alex Acosta, who was the U.S. attorney at the time in the 2008 case against Jeffrey Epstein, that sweetheart deal, the one who blessed it and sent it back to the state attorney who put him in a county jail for a year, he also admitted that he never read the victims' testimonies. What a slap in the face to the victims. Also, to Marie Villafania, who was the prosecutor, and I did a big deep dive on this for the Broken Jeffrey Epstein podcast that I hosted on Marie and all of the work she did and how hard it was for her to get a lot of these girls who were underage to open up and tell them her story. Because what Jeffrey Epstein did to so many of these girls was convince them that they were prostitutes themselves, that they were the ones in trouble when the police were coming around trying to talk to them, that they were trying to get to them. He said that what they were doing was illegal, and they were so young, they'd come from broken families, they didn't know any better, they had recruited their friends, he had convinced them that they were just complicit in this entire sex trafficking operation, offering them lawyers themselves. And Marie Villafania had to try to get to these girls who were running from her to sit down and tell their stories, and they did. And once they did, they wanted justice. You can hear that in my interview with Courtney Wild. I did 2 episodes on her in Broken Jeffrey Epstein, Jane Doe 1, and it's incredible. I mean, her story was so crucial, and she is a part of those victim testimonies that Alex Acosta never even read. But you know who he did meet with? You know who he thought was worthy of meeting with? Epstein's attorneys, Jay Lefkowitz and Ken Starr. He actually left site in Miami and went all the way up to Palm Beach, which is about an hour and a half away from Miami, to meet with him in a shady airport hotel where he wouldn't be recognized, to meet with those 2 lawyers and hash out a non-prosecution agreement for Jeffrey Epstein. And yet he's the one blaming the state attorney. He was the one who made this happen. It's really disgusting. And it just goes back to the fact that these victims have never been at the front of the story, not back then in 2008 and not now. It is despicable that Kash Patel could think that he could actually tell Congress that he's never even read these 302s, he's never even read the depositions, he's never even listened to the victims' accounts. In those accounts, they tell you who the other people are they have to go after, who are the perps, who are the John Does, and they give information about how to get there. If you don't want to look, if you don't want to listen, if you don't think they're credible enough, and this is part of the problem with society, the credibility bias is really towards the power structure and away from the accusers. Accusers have to go above and beyond to prove their truth. And it's just There's so many of them. The FBI said there are 1,000. Why can't we believe them? Why is it so hard in this post Me Too era? Okay, I want to keep going because this is a switch to another topic, which is incredibly related. It's all related, by the way. It's this silencing. It's this, suppression of voices of people who challenge the power structures, authority, the victims, the journalists, even comedians now. So, as we all know, Jimmy Kimmel has been suspended indefinitely. I doubt he'll be back on ABC. And it was a very swift decision. It was actually, the FCC chair, Brendan Carr, made it known he was unhappy with Jimmy Kimmel, said that he might take away the licenses for some of the ABC affiliates for running his show. ABC affiliates pulled it, and the top brass at ABC, at Disney, within, a few hours, decided, let's just cut our main talent. No one's immune. Everyone is afraid. And seeing that happen reminded me of CNN. I was watching, it's a clip that's actually been going around for a while. And it's of John Berman on CNN. And he is interviewing one of the members of the House Oversight Committee, one of the members who would have been interviewing Alex Acosta. And, John Berman is adding a lot of caveats, and he's saying a lot of things to protect Donald Trump, for example. First, why don't you take a listen to the entire interview.
Again, I do want to say we have no reason to think that he was in any way involved with that check itself. Also, no reason to think he's detected any wrongdoing involving Jeffrey Epstein. You noted, you're a prosecutor, you're a lawyer here. There's this defamation.
I would say we have lots of reasons to think he was involved in wrongdoing. I mean, at this point, there's a lot of smoke. There may be some fire, but I would just push back and say I think there's a lot of reason to think Donald Trump was involved.
Involved with what? I'm sorry, what proof do you have that he was involved with wrongdoing in regards to Jeffrey Epstein? And if that's the case, why have there been no prosecutions over 20 years here? Because there haven't really been any allegations that he was involved with wrongdoing.
There are a lot of connections where Donald Trump was named, right? We had a 14-year-old claiming that she was raped by him, then withdrew that claim after she was apparently threatened. His name appears a lot. And again, we at this point, our job is to find justice for these survivors, and that means that we need to continue digging, knowing that there is a cover-up taking place right now. And I didn't say that we have proof. At this point, we have a lot of smoke. But Donald Trump's name is clearly mentioned multiple times. We've seen him lie over and over about things that we now know to be true. So again, I think that we, as the Oversight Committee, we owe an obligation to the girls, the American people out there, to keep digging and find out the truth, whoever's involved.
Again, Donald Trump has not been named in any connection or charged with any wrongdoing there. Ghislaine Maxwell, take this for what it is, but Ghislaine Maxwell said, she never saw Donald Trump or anyone, for that matter, engaged in any wrongdoing connected to Jeffrey Epstein. Dave Midd, Congressman from California.
I will just point out that Ghislaine Maxwell was indicted for perjury after she made that statement that you mentioned, transferred to minimum security prison in Texas. So, again.
Okay. So Berman says there's no reason to think Donald Trump is involved in any wrongdoing with Jeffrey Epstein. He says hold on, let me go through all the things. He says he pushes back. He says, involved with what? What proof do you have? There haven't been any allegations that he was involved in wrongdoing. Trump has not been charged with wrongdoing. And that last part is true. Trump has not been charged with wrongdoing. But there have been allegations. The Jane Doe that Representative Min is referring to. And really what he should have been saying is that President Trump has not been charged with wrongdoing by law enforcement. Add that caveat, law enforcement. But he has been accused by this Jane Doe who dropped her lawsuit before the 2016 election, just days before November, citing intimidation. Okay? Now, this is going to bring me back to, and bring you all back to, an interview that I had in August with Michael Cohen, who, is now a commentator on the left. But before this, in 2016, the period of time in 2016, when President Trump was then a candidate and about to win re-election. And this Jane Doe dropped her case, citing intimidation. He was the fixer at the time, right? So as you'll see in this interview that I had with Michael Cohen, he tried to find this anonymous Jane Doe. And there's a reason why these Jane Does filed to be anonymous, to prevent the sort of harassment, to not be found, to be anonymous. They don't use their own names and addresses. That's why they're called Jane Does. Otherwise, they'd use their own names and use their own addresses. They don't want to be harassed. They don't want intimidation. They know what that could mean for them, their families, their safety, especially when they're up against some of the most powerful people in the world. So take a listen to what Michael Cohen told me at the time about tracking down this Jane Doe.
Only case that I was involved with was a Jane Doe, an infant, by and through her mom, Mary Jane Doe, right, as legal guardian. That case was dismissed not because of anything that I spoke to the lawyers, and I've talked about this a million times. I turn around and I receive this summons and a complaint, and the averments in it are awful. They're despicable. It talks about basically rape of an underage female, claiming and alleging that Donald was involved in it and all that other nonsense. I ended up taking a private investigator and trying to find out who this person was. And we went to the address that allegedly this minor lived at in the Bronx. Well, lo and behold, the investigator responds back and says the only thing that's there is an empty parking lot. There's no building there. It's an empty lot.
Now, Michael Cohen goes on to say that this woman didn't exist because the address was a parking lot in the Bronx. And of course she would use a parking lot in the Bronx. Why would she use her home address? Most of them use their lawyers' addresses, by the way. But this Jane Doe chose to use the parking lot instead. But she's not going to use her home address. Otherwise, you would just run it through a search people machine and find out the name of the person and out them. That's not the point of being a Jane Doe. And that's an obvious use of intimidation. I mean, private investigators have been used throughout the Jeffrey Epstein case, frankly. Courtney Wild, the victim that I referenced earlier, who was crucial in the 2008 case, putting it together, she was harassed by her private investigators, nearly run off the road by them. So to send a private investigator to find the Jane Doe is a form of intimidation. And Michael Cohen is admitting that he was a part of this Jane Doe who dropped her case due to intimidation. It was a huge admission, by the way. And Michael Cohen, if you listen to this full podcast, which is still on my YouTube channel, it's called Inside the Epstein Allegation Trump's Fixer Tried to Shut Down. You can listen to it on my YouTube channel. You can listen to it on podcasts, wherever you're getting it. You can listen to our full interview. Michael Cohen is lashing out at me after he makes his admission that he did this for President Trump. And he says that this girl was a quote unquote infant, that she was 13 at the time, and that they tried to figure out who she was. And I asked him, well, what did President Trump say to you? And this is what he said.
But when you asked, you had to have asked Trump about it, though, when you were like, well,
I did ask him. He told me it was bullshit. Take care of it. I said, okay.
That was it.
That's it.
It's bullshit.
He said, it's bullshit. Never happened.
Were you like, there's all these pictures. Is this going to be a problem around the same time?
No. I said, you sure? You sure? He goes, Michael, it's bullshit.
That's just the way he communicates. Like, you don't get much more info than that.
It's what he told me on this one.
Yeah. And you believed him.
100%. Then he said to me, let me know what happens. I said, sure.
Now, you will only hear about this story on my channel because it's gotten pick up nowhere. Even though President Trump's fixer made this admission on the record. This is a huge breakthrough, right? But you're not going to read about it anywhere else. You're not going to hear about it. It's not being played on TV. And I've seen my podcast, by the way, play on TV. They've been played on CNN, MSNBC, Fox, etc. They have been people are happy to run podcasts. And this is a huge admission. You think people would follow the story, but no one has. And you want to know why? Because it flies way too close to the sun. Now, I asked the White House for comment, and they declined. They declined to comment on the record. CNN did not get back to me either. But if they were following this story, they would know that there were allegations, and there are reasons to think, right? Now, I'll tell you why people aren't following this. Because there's fear. There's real fear. President Trump last week filed a $15 billion lawsuit against the New York Times for pieces that he said mocked him, essentially. He filed a $10 billion lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal for finding I guess you would call it a body. That's the way it was described, birthday card given to Jeffrey Epstein that suggested that he knew about his underage sexual trysts or some sort of sexual trysts. He denies that they're real. And all of the coverage has been, let me read some of the coverage, by the way. This is how it was covered by the press. ABC. It's not my signature, Trump says, about alleged Epstein birthday book letter, even after the Epstein estate gave the entire book to the House Oversight Committee. And then New York Times, even the New York Times writes their headline, Inside Epstein's Birthday Book, apparently signed by Trump. The book came straight from Epstein's estate, apparently. So did they forge it? Did they slip this fake card in from President Trump, who is referenced twice, by the way, in this book? Once from this card that is in the shape of a naked woman, by the way, with his signature where, in the pubic region. FBI Director Kash Patel was asked, are you going to investigate this forgery that was submitted to the committee? And he said that they hadn't even opened an investigation. And yet they're suing the Wall Street Journal for $10 billion over it. And when I say there, I mean President Trump. President Trump has sued CBS over that interview with Kamala Harris. They stood down. ABC over George Stephanopoulos' comments. They stood down and paid him out. Who's next? And that's why in the interview that you saw with John Berman, it's dizzying. There are so many caveats, so many. He hasn't been accused, this, that, alleged, yada, yada. There are so many qualifiers, even though we know at the heart of the story why we're covering it is not just because there are a number of other very powerful men involved, but because the president also has connections to Jeffrey Epstein. They had a friendship, and he's the one who's stopping the files from being released. So we need to know why, even if the allegations are false, like he said, the Jane Doe allegations. That's fine, but release the Epstein tapes. Respond to these things. And he's just unwilling to. And in the meantime, everything is just being sanded down with caveats and qualifiers to protect President Trump. And it's just exhausting. I mean, that's what reporters tell me. And it's just the second guessing over the phrasing. And it's not being covered quite aggressively as it could be. And this is why. It's the fear. If you can destroy a celebrated comedian who has so many fans, and it wasn't a ratings issue, it wasn't a fickle audience, over a threat from the government. I mean, no one's immune to this. Certainly not as journalists. If you work in mainstream media and you say the wrong thing, you didn't say the right allegedly, you didn't say the right allegation. Like, I feel bad for John Berman, for having to say that. He's a good guy, but like, he clearly knows that if he says the wrong thing, no one's going to back him up. That's the times we're in right now. Those are the times we're in right now. That is the reality. And so, I think that it's a stifling time. It's a silencing time. It's a frightening time. And, I'm committed to moving forward with my journalism, even as I face intimidation and all of that. I can't do it without you, without your listening, following, subscribing, your support, signing up for the red letter. I couldn't do it without my team. I want to thank my producer, Eric Abinante, Adam Stewart, who does my thumbnails, Abby Baker, who's doing research, and Daniel Rosen, who is helping me out build a community and a business so that I can keep working and keep digging and breaking these types of stories that you're not going to find elsewhere. I hope you'll share this with everyone because a lot of people still don't know about this story. And I hope you'll stay on with the channel. And I'll tell you when I see law enforcement officials being inconsistent. I mean, this is a really sad moment. You've got the FBI director saying he's not even looking at the victims' testimonies. Believe me, it's hard for those women to come forward and tell the stories of the abuse that they suffered. And then you have the former U.S. attorney of Miami saying he didn't even bother to look. He didn't even look at the 50-page memo that Marie Villafania spent almost a year working on to recommend 35 charges. I'm going to actually read you some of those charges just so you understand the severity of them and how he didn't even look at them. Hold on one second. It's going to take me a minute to find them, but it's worth it because it will make you, I think, sorry, it was 53 pages long, numerous federal sex crimes, and the charges included trafficking of minor girls, some as young as 14, sexual abuse, recruitment of others by buying bounties, and transport of minors for sexual activities. And by the way, the FBI went on to say there were 1,000 victims. He was charged with 2 counts, state crimes, an ankle bracelet, and he was still abusing and assaulting women at that time while in jail. Actually, he got to go to his office. He got to actually work from his office while he was in that 13-month period. And that's when he was assaulting women one time with police on the other side of the door. All right. Sorry to break it down for you. I am on this Sunday in such a way that is harsh and telling and just tells you that people don't have to protect you. They don't have to listen. They don't have to care. And the victims, they tell me they're not going away. In fact, I have a series coming out soon about how they're fighting back, how they are trying to tell their story, how they're trying to hold lawmakers who refuse to listen to them to account. And you'll see that. I'll be featuring that on my Substack, The Red Letter. Go to tarapalmeri.com. You can sign up for it. If you become a paid subscriber, you can support me and my independent journalism. And you can hear the stories that some of the most powerful people choose not to. Thanks again.